You can't run Elden Ring on the Switch 2 unless you like playing at 10 frames per second. Guys, why are we surprised about this? I mean, if you can read all these threads, again, this is just the obvious of it, right? I have the Switch 2. We've talked about this from the beginning. Nintendo scammed everybody. It's underpowered. You're doing better if you have a Switch 1.
Hello everyone, this is Magbo Gaming speaking once again on Angry Guy's channel. And we just keep getting more bad news from Nintendo Switch 2, haven't we? Now, the sales week after week continues to get worse and worse. Maybe we'll bump up a little bit more with the Star-Crossed World of the expansion pack of the Kirby Forgotten Land thing that's coming on Switch 2. Yeah, maybe that will save it a tiny bit, but it's not like a system seller or anything like that. It's one of those more lower ranked Nintendo games. I love Kirby, don't get me wrong. I definitely love Kirby, but you get the idea. Anyways, if you also want to check out Angry Guy at Rumble, in the description below, where he does uncensored, non-filtered type of videos, and he curses like a sailor and everything. Check him out. He does exclusive live streams as well that you won't be able to find here on YouTube. And not only that, check out the Angry Crypto Academy if you want to learn how to invest into crypto, learn which crypto that we will highly recommend. Take it from me. I've been into crypto since 2017. It's been almost 8 years, and I have very decent knowledge, and I'm pretty sure Angry Guy does as well. He could teach you all that stuff as well, and I got into it because of my vast knowledge, but also because there are coins that I'm curious to know what they are. And yeah, it's actually worth it. Anyways, let's get to the video at hand right now. Yet another video from Nintendo. Yep. We've been covering a lot of videos from Nintendo because what we're focusing on this channel these days. Criticizing on the Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo as a whole. So let's get this started and let's see what this guy has to say about this worst performing week in Japan. Yes, it's not doing well in Japan either now. And before that, even as the Switch 2 was a lot cheaper, it was doing fairly well because it was cheaper. But of course now there's not much going on. There's not much new stuff coming out for Switch 2 for a little while, and the honeymoon phase is long gone at this point. So yeah, let's get started with this commentary.
Good morning, folks. This is more of a sales update and less of an analysis because I only got like 30 minutes to do this right now. If you want to hear all about my opinions about the sales and the hype dwindling downwards on the Switch 2, you can watch any of my other videos prior to this one. Plus I had the big one yesterday. Anyway, so the Switch 2 numbers for Japan over the previous week have just come in, and it is by far the worst performing week of the Switch 2. Like, we're talking a huge nosedive. This is completely objective. 35,000 units sold in a single week for the Switch 2 this far after launch. Nobody predicted it would be this low right now, and that's just an objective bit of news. Like, this is not me adding any kind of commentary to it.
From what I understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's 35,000 units of Switch 2 in Japan alone, right? Because if it adds to America, it could be a little bit more than that. But yeah, since Japan's was selling heavily on the Switch 2, I would imagine, well, it should still be doing a little bit better. But let's keep going.
This is me just saying that the Switch 2 has sold its significantly worst performing week, and it is like really low. Now, it could be a supply issue. It could be that they burnt through everything during the past 2 weeks while it was a holiday in Japan. I haven't been shy about this. I actually think that the Switch 2 is fairly available in Japan to the point where if you actually do want one, you can get one. It just takes a little bit more effort, similar to trying to grab a Switch 2 in the stateside in June. But as it goes, this is just my assumption based off of the type of patterns that I'm seeing and based off of some of the conversations that I'm following online. If I give Nintendo the benefit of the doubt and we say that it actually is a supply issue, that could potentially mean that they had pushed out as many units as they did over the course of the past 2 weeks because of the holiday over there in Japan. And this is the following week where they didn't have as much stock to push. And it could also mean that they were potentially trying to save more units specifically for this week because these numbers are for last week, right? And since
He's about to say the Kirby game, but I just want to say, yes, I'm pretty sure the Kirby Star-Crossed World game is definitely going to push a little bit more sales, at least for that week, but it's going to die down quick. It ain't going to be enough, man. That's what I'm going to say right now.
and the Forgotten Land DLC, whatever it's called, Switch 2 edition. Since that comes out this week, when the next week's numbers come, that'll show that more Switch 2 units were potentially sold, and that could be the bump up they're looking for.
I really am disappointed though that this DLC for Forgotten Land is not on Switch 1 as well. The reason I say that is I haven't seen too much gameplay footage. I know that Jamboree TV has more graphics and better frame rate perhaps, or HD quality or something, whatever, than the Super Mario Jamboree, but not by a lot. Now, this new Kirby Star-Crossed World game, like, can you honestly tell me if the Switch 1 can actually run that thing? Because maybe it could, maybe it's a little bit slower, but it could possibly do it. I don't know. I haven't seen the whole game myself, and I don't think I will until I actually pick up the game for myself and actually play it. Yeah, so I got the original game, Forgotten Land, and I'm probably going to get back to it because I haven't beaten it 100% yet. But maybe this could be like a motivation. What do you guys think? Is Star-Crossed World something that could have also been on Switch 1? I can understand Jamboree TV because of the whole webcam thing. It cannot be replicated on Switch 1. But for this case, I really don't think so, honestly.
Similar to what they did way back when Bonanza came out. So we very likely could be looking at, like, it dropped massively this week and then suddenly it just increases a lot last week, because that's exactly what happened prior to Bonanza. I'm not of the opinion that that's going to happen, but I'm not going to rule it out. I think this is just following the regular market trends. A lot of the people that wanted the Switch 2 have gotten the Switch 2, and it's not a console that is gaining hype, it's a console that is losing hype. They're getting...
Yeah, Switch 2 is not really very attractive right now, is it? After all the problem we've been hearing from Mario Kart World and some other games that, like Elden Ring, that runs at 15 frames per second, and more than half of the whole library right now are game key cards. Like, it's not really attracted to Switch 2 right now. Not even after Kirby Air Rider comes out, not even after Pokemon ZA, which is also on Switch 1, not even after Metroid Prime 4, that's also on Switch 1. That's not going to be enough to hype me up for the Switch 2 anytime soon. You need a Smash Brothers for the thing. That's what I've been saying for a while.
So much bad press because of game key cards. They're getting so much bad press because of how poorly the third-party titles play. And obviously in the tighter circles, we're talking about bans, we're talking about Pal World, there's all this other stuff that's going on. And then the most important thing is that the only games that they're offering are Switch 1 games, so people are less incentivized to go out and buy a Switch 2. And a few weeks ago, I said that the Switch 1 sales numbers were very close to the Switch 2. Now they're even closer. You're looking at 17,000 Switch 1s sold last week.
Can you imagine 17,000? That's like half of the 35,000 that was sold of Switch 2. So if Switch 2 continues to decline in sales, and the fact that Nintendo is telling developers just keep making games for Switch 1, it's gonna make the Switch 1 still relevant over the Switch 2 until there is a game that the Switch 1 wouldn't be able to run whatsoever. Like literally nothing whatsoever. That the moment you put the Switch 2 game on a Switch 1, and if somehow you're able to crack the code and you're able to actually try to run it, I think to the point that it will crash your Switch 1 and it will be unplayable, it will be bricked and stuff because the game is way too powerful on Switch 1. But if you play a game like Kirby Air Riders or even Mario Kart World on Switch 1, it could probably still run it if it could bypass this whole thing. And maybe it'll lag a little bit at certain points, but it will still run. It will not die. That's the point I've been thinking. Like, a lot of these games that are coming out on Switch 2 were originally for the Switch 1. So it's not very attractive right now, for sure. Maybe I'll say something differently next year, but for now, it's still not attractive to me, no matter what they're bringing out right now. There's not enough exclusives. There's not enough, like, incentive for you to spend $450 just to get it. Like, it's not worth it right now.
And the Switch 2 is at 35,000. And I keep saying it, but we're getting closer and closer to that week where the last gen console outsells the Switch 2. And every time I make that statement, the comment section gets filled up. Oh, there's zero chance that the Switch 1 is going to outsell the Switch 2. Yeah, we'll see. That gap is getting really close. The bottom line is, when people look at Nintendo, they view it as a budget company because they provide budget quality. That's not to say that the games aren't fun, and that's not to say that the games are not timeless, and that's not to say that you could lose yourself in the games for hours upon end. But the reality is, the price matters, and it's always mattered for Nintendo. And really, one of the best benefits of...
Yes, indeed, that price does matter. Because Nintendo always had the reputation of being a budget-friendly console. All the way up from the NES, probably, all the way up to the Nintendo Switch. there was always an alternative for you to enjoy and spend a lot less money and have a lot of different games you can choose from to play on that thing. Now, the cheapest thing we can get is a 230 Switch Lite console. Less than 10 years ago, our most budget-friendly console for Nintendo was the 2DS at $80. Yes, $80 freaking dollars. That is a far cry compared to the Switch Lite being at $230, which should have been around at least $100 to $120 at this point of time. Yes, more than 6 years after that thing came out.
Has in Japan right now is that the PS5 is just so much absurdly higher than it. But at the same time, the Switch 1 is just so much cheaper. And if you're gonna be playing Switch 1 games anyway, in addition to underperforming and stuttering third-party titles, why would you pay Switch 2 money for the Switch 1 experience? The bottom line is there, and that bottom line...
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you're telling devs to just make Switch 1 games, then you're not encouraging sales for Switch 2. Then why would people buy a Switch 2 if there's a Switch 1 that can play the majority of the games that are still coming out today? Yeah, I'm talking about the grand majority. More than 90% of the games coming out from Nintendo this year and maybe next year will be on Switch 1 and not on Switch 2. That's not going to help the Switch 2 go forward and be a better alternative. Is that why you increased the price of Switch 1? Because you really want to milk and honey every single unit you can? And also because, well, you're making a lot more content for that Switch, so we're going to raise it more? So if you want to buy the Switch 2, yeah, it's not that much more you have to spend on it or something. Or just buy the Switch 1 because it's cheaper than the Switch 2. And most of the games that are coming out is still for Switch 1. And in this all digital future that's coming in, after they let go of Switch 1, the Switch 2 with game key cards and all that stuff, you're going to want to prepare yourself financially and have the ownership in hand. And crypto, that's where crypto comes in, man. Because you will have your own assets, you will have control on who have access to that money or not the government, not Nintendo. Take it away, Angry.
Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now.
You can't run Elden Ring on the Switch 2 unless you like playing at 10 frames per second. Guys, why are we surprised about this? Right? I mean, if you can read all these threads, again, this is just the obvious of it, right? I have the Switch 2. We've talked about this from the beginning. Nintendo scammed everybody. It's underpowered. You're doing better if you have a Switch 1 or even a Switch OLED, because it's not worth even grabbing a brand new console that has no hardware innovation besides using it as a mouse and magnetic Joy-Cons. It just still plays the same old games that you gotta pay for more if you want to get an upgrade pack to make it actually scalable on the Switch 2 so it looks decent. It's the same old thing. It's just a bunch of kids' cartoon games. They're never going to be able to compete with Sony or Microsoft, and we've seen this historically. Again, and here's the thing. The market share between these two these two are one, right? Between this and this is completely different. This is for casual gamers. This is for serious gamers. That's it. That's it at the end of the day. So comment what you think. Did you think the Switch 2 was going to be able to run anything at a very competitive high frame rate that demands a lot of computing power? No, of course not. But comment what you think. Are you enjoying your Switch 2? Do you have a Switch 2? And follow up there for all things gaming.
Okay, let's get back to the commentary of Nintendo.
Is how much is somebody willing to take out of their wallet to pay for a console? And at the end of the day, if I hold a Switch 1 and a Switch 2 in front of somebody and put Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on one of them and Mario Kart World on the other one, and I tell them, hey, this one is whatever, $500 and this one is $300, and those are obviously US numbers, those aren't the prices in yen. When you're over there, it's different. That average customer is going to look at them and be like, why would I pay extra? It's the same thing, give me that one. And it's showing. These are massive drops off in sale. These are nosedives. It still hasn't flatlined. I'm still trying to find where that base is going to be, where the Switch 2 just does a huge jump back forward and it like hops around a little bit and it just levels off. But right now, since launch until this point, it just like drops down, slightly bounces back up, drops down, slightly bounces back up, but it's going downwards like very... very consistently. With the amount of hype that's generated in Japan, with the amount of popularity that it's had, every few weeks people are estimating what that baseline is going to be. And
since the launch week of the Switch 2, from what I understood, like the sales coming out is there's like a massive drop in sales week after week. When a new Nintendo Switch 2 game comes out, it slightly goes up, but not enough to recover from their losses. And then weeks later, when there's no Switch 2 games that are coming out that are exclusive to it, another huge drop down. But yet at the same time, you see Nintendo Switch 1 games still coming out by third-party developers and all that stuff doing all this time. So it's like eventually people are still going to prefer to buy the Switch 1 over the Switch 2. And then the gap is just going to get closer and closer. And then imagine the Switch 1 sells more than Switch 2. So if that's the case, then there's a problem there. The lack of third-party support that is in the cartridge, the lack of Nintendo first-party support, because all we had was Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, the Jamboree TV, and now the Kirby Star Cross Worlds, whatever that thing's cost. I keep forgetting the name. And eventually we'll get Pokemon Z8 and Kirby Air Riders. But what else? What else after that, right? That's what we're still waiting for. I hope there's a Nintendo Direct on September so we can know more if there's going to be more games like that coming out.
every few weeks that number has dropped downwards. Now, to be clear, if this thing just levels off and it continues to sell 35,000 units a week, or if it like bounces back up and it's hitting 50 to 60,000 a week, that's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. That's a good baseline. But the thing is, right now, I don't know where that baseline is, and I don't think anybody knows where that baseline is going to be. Like, the Switch 2 has already been surpassed by the Game Boy Advance as far as launch lineup sales. The PS2 is not that far off behind it, and if the sales numbers don't pick up within a couple weeks, it's gonna be the third fastest selling console in Japan. And at that point, they can still talk about how it's outperforming the Switch 1, even though the Switch 1 was gaining momentum and the Switch 2 is losing momentum. To give you an idea, this same alignment with the Nintendo Switch 1 came out. That's week 12 after launch. It sold 27,000 units. The Switch 2 sold 35,000 units. And this was very much during the time where people's heads were slowly turning back towards Nintendo after the failure that was the Wii U. This was around the time where Nintendo was like, wait a sec, people are actually interested, we need to start making more of these, and they could not make them fast enough. Because all of a sudden, everybody was like, Nintendo is back, and we are ready to give them all our money. There was no need to manufacture hype, there was no need to withhold stock and pump more out when a different game is coming out, because they didn't need to. They're just like, you're gonna want to play this Zelda game, you're gonna want to play this Mario Kart game, and down the line we have Mario Odyssey. Not to mention the fact that the whole concept of the Switch was still revolutionary. People's heads were turning. The Switch 2 is boring. It's uninteresting. And I can already read the comments that I'm going to be seeing right now. So you're telling me that it's still outselling the Switch 1, which was the best-selling Nintendo console? Yes, I am. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna start steering into that. I want you just to get more and more confident and more happier about this. Because I think it'll be that much funnier if the Switch 2 fails. Because if it doesn't...
Okay, yeah. Well, just because the Switch 2 is outselling the Switch 1 now, still week after week since its launch, doesn't mean that the Switch 1 is failing now. I mean, people are still preferring that over Switch 2 just because most of the games that they want to play are still on Nintendo Switch 1, unless you are a Donkey Kong Bonanza fan, right? Because, like, I don't see other reasons legitimately why you would get a Switch 2 when most of these stuff, yeah, I almost forgot to point out Dragon Drive. I heard that it wasn't that good. It's a revolutionary game, but it's not something that's like, oh my god, it's gonna sell a lot of Switch 2s. No. I think until we see a new 3D Mario game, a new 3D Zelda game, like that revolutionizes Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, and until we get like a Super Smash Bros. Game that far surpasses Ultimate, I think the Switch 2 is not gonna do very well in sales. Unless for some reason they have like a new IP that gets a lot of hype for some reason, like right before release, and then once it's released, like it moves Switch 2 units. I don't see them pulling something like a Splatoon back in the Wii U days, that it actually was super popular right before release. I don't see them doing that, But then again, you know, when the next Nintendo Direct comes, we're gonna see what Nintendo has up their sleeves.
Fail. I mean, worst case scenario, nobody going up against a corporation was expecting to win. Me and many people that are listening to this right now, most of you actually that are listening to this right now, we didn't put a penny towards this thing. So worst case scenario, we just sat out for something that we don't want to buy. But there are a lot of people right now that have invested a lot of money into something that is collecting dust, invested a lot of money into something, and they're wondering why there aren't more games being pushed towards it. A lot of people that invested a lot of money.
Well, this is why you don't get a console at launch. If you are not that confident at this point, oh my god, you get the system at launch, there's a lot of hype behind it, you play this one launch game or two that you really enjoy, and then weeks and months passes by and you see that there is a lack of content, new content that's coming out for it, then you feel like your investment has been a waste, and you feel like maybe you want to just sell it off because you don't feel like it, or it's just saying, oh, I bought the Switch 2, I'm just gonna sell it and I guess I'll buy it back in when there's actual good games coming out in a few years from now. Well, if you actually believe that there's gonna be actual good games coming out for the Switch 2, for example, then how about you just hold on to that investment and just focus on other games in the meantime? So then later on, as you see the investment grow, you see that there's a lot more better games coming out for it. I'm like, oh great, this game's awesome. I still got the console still sitting on my shelf or something. Let me go pop it out and finally play this game. And then you update the whole thing, you get up to date, you play it, and I'm like, okay, then this is why I bought the Switch 2 for at launch. Me personally, like, I wouldn't recommend you invest on something when there's nothing for you to play that you like. Of course, there's games to play on it. There's Switch 1's game you can play on it. But if you already own a Switch 1 and there isn't enough games that you really want you to get a Switch 2 that really motivates you to get to the ecosystem, then it's not worth it. Then it's better off you just wait till there's better deals, there's a lot more games to choose from, and then maybe you'll be saying, okay, now it's definitely worth it, now I'm definitely gonna save up for it. You're gonna have a lot of time to save up for this console. It's not going away anytime soon. It's still selling decently, even though it's dropping in sales, but you get the idea.
And maybe they're happy about that. I bought a Wii U and a 3DS, both when they were still in their early infancy and they weren't making sales, and I had a lot of fun with those. But I think I was the exception. I don't think I was the norm. And likewise, that's why you're hearing so much about people that are buying and regretting their purchase of the Nintendo Switch 2. That's why you're hearing so much about people that decided to return their consoles now, because they were promised a premium experience. They were promised a modern gen, high, expensive experience. And instead, they got the Nintendo budget experience at the PlayStation price. As of yesterday.
So here's the thing. This is what FOMO does to people. The FOMO is fear of missing out. Oh my god, get the Switch 2 right now. You have to get it right now because the tariff is going to make it even more expensive later on. Why will you wait for a console? You have to get it now. Just like the PS5. Yeah, you didn't got it at launch. Then screw you, because now it's a lot more expensive than ever before. You already missed the boat. No, that's FOMO, man. And FOMO is what gets you to buy something out of peer pressure, out of hoping that this is a good investment, that you'll have like 5 to 10 years worth of content that's coming your way and you already have the system that plays it. But then, you know, you wait for so long and there's not much going on. Then you wonder why you bought it in the first place.
The Switch 2 basically no longer has a lead over the two PlayStation consoles that are basically tied with it, the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. And then today we find out that the Switch 2 has had its worst performing week by a long shot. And keep in mind, this isn't absurd. 4 out of the 5 worst performing weeks since the Switch 2 launch has been in the past 4 weeks, with the 5th worst performing week coming on that 1 week where they withheld stock prior to Bonanza coming out in order to inflate the numbers and make it seem like everybody was excited to go to the stores and buy Bonanza. So it's not like last week was the best performing week, or second best performing week, or third best performing week. It's just working its way downwards at this point, and the jump from last week to this week is so high, it's basically a cliff. The only thing we are left to do is to speculate whether it's a stock issue or it's a hype issue. I know what I think. You all know what I think. If you didn't get a chance to see my video from yesterday, go ahead and watch that one. The headlines might be feeding you something, but reality says otherwise. Alright, I gotta go back to work.
Okay, so I'm gonna end it here, this commentary. Gonna do my quick conclusion on this whole thing. So, the sales are going down week after week, month after month. and there's not much games that excites me to get the console. Plus, it's extremely expensive. Like, I am not gonna spend $450 for a box, for a piece of plastic that doesn't even have games that comes with it, because that's the cheapest way you could get a Switch 2, because then otherwise, like $500 with the Mario Kart bundle, you might as well get that, because you're saving $30 on getting the physical release. But I still want the physical release regardless at some point. My issue is that this is not helping the Switch 2 getting sales. You know, the fact that Nintendo is telling many devs to just keep working on Switch 1 games, all the game key cards that really kills off the gaming preservation and all that stuff, it doesn't help them move forward. So there has to be change, and they will be changed, because otherwise it's just gonna fail. There will be changes on improving the Switch 2. They have to, because if they don't, then this is what's gonna happen year after year, or month after month, or week after week, that the sales are gonna drop like crazy. No one's going to give a crap about it anymore. People are going to move on from it. Switch 1 will surpass Switch 2 sales once again. And then you have to get back to the drawing board to see how you're going to improve the Switch 2. Because you cannot sit on Switch 1 forever, honestly, Nintendo. You can't sit on Switch 1, because when we get a PS6 coming out and you're still with your Switch 1, the PS6 could beat you with a pinky in performance and graphics. It will beat you with a pinky. Like, literally. Of course, Switch will still have a lot more games, but in performance and power and stuff, like, it could probably run GTA 7 on it, no problem. And then if you put it on a Switch, if you put GTA 7 on a Switch, if you even find a way to do it, well, the Switch is going to blow up and it's going to die and it will be brick forever, and you get the idea. It can't handle that graphics. So, you can't sit on the Switch forever. That's all I'm going to say. So, if you guys want to also check out Angry Guy at Rumble, he curses like a sailor like crazy over there. He does exclusive live streams in that channel as well. That is too much for YouTube to handle. It's not allowed on YouTube because he curses like crazy over there. And check out the Crypto Academy if you want to invest into crypto and know how you could get in the game before the Clarity Act gets passed, I guess. Because that's what's going to happen pretty soon in Congress. And you may want to get yourself prepared financially before things get crazy. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Check out also my channel at Magbo Gaming in the description below, that I definitely have some videos coming up pretty soon, especially the next game hunt tour and me hunting down certain games. And I have a lot of old content as well that you can watch as well. Yeah, that's all I have to say, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one. Magbo out. Peace. Bye-bye.